Hello guys, in today's video I'll be showing you footage from my first ever gig. So in this gig I played Duality by Slipknot, Run to the Hills by Iron Maiden, Mellowship Slinky in B major by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Creep by Radiohead. Sadly I don't have footage of the last one, but I've got footage of all the others. This gig was 6 weeks after I first started playing, and I thought it'd be an interesting kind of throwback to see kind of where my playing started and where it's progressed to now, and how those songs have influenced my playing even today, and kind of the progression of how it's changed me. So I'll explain a bit about each song as we go along and kind of share the whole song because it's interesting footage. I know not everyone has the luxury of having footage from their first ever gig, so I thought it was a kind of interesting little insight to share because it's quite an unusual thing. I was 12 years old at this gig. This was at Worcester Music Festival. So the first song I'm going to show is Run to the Hills by Iron Maiden. Now, I was having bass lessons at the time. I'd been having them a couple of weeks, and the person who was teaching me bass was actually a guitar player, so he said, look, I'll teach you what I know, but I can only take you so far. So first lesson, I learned stuff like Let It Be by the Beatles and stuff like that. In the second lesson, I kind of went home. I was enjoying what I was playing, but I went home and thought, really want to learn Run to the Hills by Iron Maiden. So I went and taught myself that song on top of the song I'd been given as homework to learn. And I also taught myself the 3-finger gallop that I thought Steve Harris did at the time. Obviously, in later years, I now know that he actually does it as a 2-finger gallop, but at the time I thought it was 3 fingers, so I taught myself how to do that. And so you can kind of see where that started when I first started playing versus where it is now, as it's still a technique that I use in my own stuff sometimes. So in my third bass lesson, I went there, I was like, Steve, yeah, I've done my homework, but I've also learned Run to the Hills by Iron Maiden. Can I show you it? And he goes, yeah, all right. You've shown me it at the end of the lesson, kind of not expecting anything in particular. I think he said he was expecting me to kind of fumble through it. And so I played it front to back, and yes, didn't make any mistakes. Obviously, wasn't absolutely perfect playing because I'd not long started, but he actually cried because it surprised him, and he was really proud of that, like I'd managed to go home and kind of teach myself that. So it's kind of interesting to have footage from kind of around when I would have very first learnt that. So that's the first song, which I will put in now. one. Then the second one was Duality by Slipknot. Now, a lot of you probably already know Paul Gray is one of the major reasons I started playing, so I didn't really know what a bass was. I'd never seen or heard the instrument, but I happened to stumble by chance across a video of Paul Gray teaching how to play Duality on bass. So I clicked on that, saw the instrument, and was immediately like, whoa, that I need that, that's what I want to do. And so I went to my mum one day randomly, I really want to learn bass. And she goes, I think you mean bass, but also don't you want to learn real guitar? But I was adamant, no, I want to learn bass, that's what I want to do. And like, I couldn't tell you exactly why when I saw bass I wanted to do it, but I just knew that that was what I wanted to do, and I've never looked back since. So Paul is obviously a major reason why I started playing, but why I chose bass in particular, I couldn't really say exactly. I just knew that that was what I wanted to do. Now I've also converted my whole family. So my mum initially with her comment, don't you want to learn proper guitar? Now she absolutely loves bass and it's like her number one instrument. But yeah, no one in my family is a musician, I do want to add. I'm kind of the only person, but like I didn't have a foundation to go off, so I was quite happy to kind of just teach myself certain things and find my own path, and I'm glad I was kind of able to find my own way with it and decide, yeah, I want to do that, instead of feeling like any pressure to go, well, this person in my family does this, so I must follow in their footsteps and kind of maybe feel some sense of needing to like make them proud. I just kind of thought, well, I'm just going to give this a go and do my best at it. But yeah, second song is Duality by Slipknot. So I came into my 4th bass lesson, so I'd been playing about 4 weeks I think, and said, Steve, this week I've learned Duality by Slipknot. He goes, okay. And because I didn't know that Paul Gray used a pick, because although he's using it in the video that he used to teach it, I had zero knowledge about playing, so I just kind of glossed over the fact because I started playing fingerstyle, so I just learned it fingerstyle. So you can see my little fingers going on the verse with the and yeah, I'm kind of glad that I did learn it that way initially, because I found that learning that kind of fingerstyle so early on stood me in good stead. So although it wasn't the way that he played it, because he used a pick, learning to do that and be kind of efficient at it really has helped me in the long run, and I'm happy that I kind of started working on that early. But here is the footage of Duality. Fellowship Slinky in B major by Red Hot Chili Peppers. This song I didn't teach myself. I actually was taught it in a bass lesson by another bass tutor called Tommy, who was a massive Red Hot Chili Peppers fan, and he kind of introduced me to the band and Flea's playing, which was, again, a totally different style to what I had heard. And when he taught me this song, it was like a really odd thing, because it's quite a weird bass line. Even now when I look back on it, it's a very strange bass line, especially on the verses. And it really, again, stood me in good stead with my left hand, because it's a very, like, it kind of climbs down each string and it's a bit fiddly. So it was a really good thing to learn, and good thinking on his part as well, because it really helped me along the way and helped me with my left hand dexterity as well. And also because it's got quite a few stops in it, it was good for timing and stuff like that, and just really getting locked in. So I think I'd have learnt that about the 5th week that I'd been playing, and then added it to my set at Worcester Music Festival and played it there. I guess it would have been like the week after or something like that. But yeah, again, you can see my little fingers going on the left hand. Again, these songs they're not perfect, but I thought it's an interesting starting point. So I'll play this and then I will give some kind of final thoughts.
Who's going to play a little bit of Red Hot Chili Peppers for us, man? Come on, the Flea!
So, that's all of them. Now, obviously, I am not the first and certainly will not be the last kid to have learnt that or taught themselves any of that. This video isn't to be like, oh, look how amazing I was, because it wasn't like, obviously, it's not perfect. Even now, I feel I can still improve in areas. I think you never stop learning, and I think you can learn something from everyone, even people who haven't been playing as long as you. You can still learn things from them because everyone's got a different perspective on things, different life experiences that affect the way they think about things. And I always think that you can learn something from anyone. So yeah, I don't think that I was like, obviously there's no way I was at the top of my game then. It's just something that I wanted to share. One, because obviously I can't film demos right now thanks to the house flood. Two, because it's not everyone has access to footage from their first ever gig, so I'm extremely lucky to have that. And really what I wanted to show is where I started versus where I am now, because you can still see the beginnings of the way I play all the way back then as to where it is now. There's still a lot of kind of similarities and things that, although they weren't refined back then, you can really see, like, even when I look back on it, I'm like, wow, I was doing that and I know that I do that now, but just better. So you can really see little elements where it's like starting to form myself as a player even back then. So it's really cool footage to have. I'd also be curious to know what any of your first gigs were and what you played, etc. But yeah, hopefully this is a kind of interesting insight. Another thing I wanted to show in next week's video is kind of the step forward from that. So after this gig, I was in my first band, Fool's Glory. We were extremely disciplined, which again stood me in good stead. We weren't like a scatterbrained kid band, even though we were all kids. We were like really disciplined, which again I'm quite happy about, because it kind of taught me to get on with things basically in rehearsal. Obviously you can mess around and have fun, but I mean, we were kind of like a bit of a machine band at that age, which is a bit odd because most of the time, like kids, you kind of all over the place. But yeah, it was certainly an interesting experience and I don't regret it. But once I'd been in that band, I left that when I was 13 and joined a progressive groove metal band called Aromantus, which I stayed in for until I was 18. So quite a few years I was in that band, and they were really my kind of formative years that really shaped the way I was playing and play now, and really pushed me in many directions. Because a lot of the stuff was really challenging. There was a lot of different time signatures, different structures, obviously because it's prog, there's lots of different sections. Really challenging fiddly riffs, but still very feel-based and groove-based, hence progressive groove metal. But because I was basically a kid when I joined and sort of went into adulthood, young adulthood, by the time I left, I did a lot of growing in every way, both personally and playing-wise. And it really shaped a lot of my playing today, back then. And again, thankfully, there's a lot of footage of that band that I can now look back on and show and be like, yeah, so that's how I played then. Check it out in comparison to now, and kind of you can see the progression of how I've ended up where I am now and why I play the way I do. And kind of, it's just an interesting thing to see, like, look back and know what's shaped you, because it's such a huge part of my life. It's kind of like looking back on your life in general and looking at the experiences that shaped you. To me, it's the same kind of thing with my playing as well. So in that band as well, I really kind of learned to be comfortable on stage and came into my own stage presence wise, because again, I've explained in a couple of other videos about like why I move the way I do and stuff like that. And I don't plan anything when I move. It's all just what I'm feeling in the moment, and I just kind of go with it. So nothing's like, I didn't like sit down and choreograph anything. It's all just kind of whatever I was feeling. But I really had to learn to get over the hurdle of doing it for the first time, because that was a bit of an issue for me, where I was like, I haven't moved at any other gig, so if I move at this gig, everyone's all of a sudden going to be like, oh my god, she moved, and they'll make a big deal out of it. And so I was too shy to actually go ahead and do it. But it was seeing Slipknot for the first time live, actually, which was my first ever live gig when I was about 14, that really made me go, yeah, I can do this. And I started like moving more and more on stage, and I got over the nerves and kind of did it gradually, so it wasn't like a huge shock to anyone, and I knew they wouldn't make such a big deal out of it. I don't know why, but that was an issue I had, is like the first time doing something, you don't want someone to make a big deal out of it. But yeah, so in that video I'll talk more about how I kind of got the confidence to move, and kind of like coordinated moving and playing that kind of stuff, because again, that is another challenge. So like I really had to get to grips with playing that material, which was quite challenging, and moving in the way that I felt, because again, it's still all kind of different stuff that you need to sync up and learn how to, like, what's the word, like, you know, multitask with. So again, hopefully some of that info will be somewhat helpful, but I also wanted to talk about nerves on stage as well. So for that first gig that you've just seen, I get terrible anxiety, and I always have. And I'm quite a shy person, despite how it is on stage. I still see myself on stage is like a genuine part of me, but then off stage is still genuine me as well. So it's kind of like two different sides to me that I like to show. But before that gig, my first ever gig, I was extremely nervous. I felt sick, and I remember trying to eat beforehand and couldn't exactly. And basically how I kind of went ahead and did it is I literally just had to force myself to grin and bear the anxiety and just go up there and just do it. And once I'd done it once, I knew that I absolutely loved doing it. It didn't mean that nerves went away totally. There's still gigs now where I get nervous. It's just one of those things. But I think the more times you do it, it's like the moving on stage thing, where it's like once you've done it once, you really just have to just do it for the first time. And once you've done that, that's the biggest step over. And I think each time you do it, it gets a little bit easier. You may still be anxious, but you learn to deal with the anxiety, and it almost has less of a hold on you. So although you still get nervous, it's kind of like you know how to deal with it, and you sort of learn yourself and learn what works for you, because not everything works for the same person in the same way. So you will probably find your own ways of kind of coping with it. But that's kind of my 2 cents on, if you're just starting out gigging, you know, how do you actually get over the nerves and do it? And in my experience, the very first time, you've just really got to grin and bear it and just do it. And just remember that it doesn't matter. Like, whatever happens, It will not matter in even a year's time. And it's all a learning curve. Like, any mistake you make, everyone has bad gigs, everyone makes mistakes, everyone has technical issues, and they're all learning experience and they're all so valuable. Like, I've had my fair share of crap gigs and technical issues, etc. And I wouldn't change them because I've learned so much, and every time something goes wrong, you learn how to deal with it, and it makes you more comfortable in what you're doing, and it makes it that little bit easier to just go ahead and do it, and you kind of find your flow with it a bit more, and if something happens it doesn't faze you quite so much because you've been through it. But the tough part is going through it the first time. But it really is just one of those things that you've just got to think, yeah, okay, this is happening or may happen, but does it really matter in the grand scheme of things? And the answer is no, it really doesn't matter. Even if the worst possible thing you could think of happened, it still doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. So everything will be absolutely fine regardless of what happens, and it has absolutely no bearing on your future of doing it. It's the most important thing is that you go ahead and do it and that you love it, obviously. But yeah, I hope that is somewhat helpful. Again, always happy to answer questions about this stuff as well, especially if you're a beginner and you're kind of trying to find your way with this stuff. But I hope this has been an interesting insight. Again, I'm not filming this to be, oh, look at me at this age, because there are millions of people who can do what I just did then. I have absolutely zero doubts about that. It's literally just a kind of one, because it's a video idea that I don't need a proper setup to demo things because of obviously what's going on at the moment, and two, just because of the insight and to show the kind of progression, and maybe you'll see something and go, I've seen her do that and I know where that comes from now. So hopefully this is enjoyable. I will see you next week for the Aramantus videos, where you'll see kind of me really start to grow and come into my own performance and playing wise, and the complexity of the songs kind of goes up a level. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will put some links to original music down below, and I will see you next week. So bye bye.
Totally on reverse. Three. You're alright? I'm alright, yeah, just do it. Mary Claire, where are you? Yeah, Mary Claire's going to come and sing the high bit in the middle, because my voice is tired. That microphone there works. Yeah. Hello. Karina, everyone. She's proud. Gonna make a fortune, right? Oh, yes. Here you go. What Oh, so special.